Okay. All right. Awesome. So, hello. Thank you for joining the virtual learning series with Aspen Dental. My name is Kayla Kymig, and I'm on the academic and industry relations team, specifically for hygiene. So, I go and recruit our new hygienists and bring them into their career and hopefully their forever home. We started this year just as a way to connect and see what we can offer for everyone for hygienists, how we can help each other and network and just build. And so, yeah, I have some friends with me who are also a part of the big Aspen Dental team. I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves. But first up is Kristen Shepard. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kristen. I am a territory hygiene manager for Aspen. I represent New Jersey, Philadelphia, and a good portion of the rest of Pennsylvania. So I'm kind of all over this tri-state, and I get to partner with hygienists in our locations and help coach and mentor and help them with kind of their day in and day out, navigating not only like their patients clinically, but helping to kind of guide them through, the relationships in their offices. I'm a hygienist myself. I don't practice clinically so much anymore, but this job allows me to stay very connected to the dental office, which is really important and really exciting for me. So yeah, I've really been enjoying this role so far, and I've been able to meet fantastic hygienists just like Alacia, who's on with us now. So Lace, you could go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself.
All right. So my name is Alacia. I've been with Aspen Dental since 2019. I started fresh out of hygiene school, and it was a really good choice for me. I started as a float. So I was able to go around through three offices and kind of, learn from a lot of different people. Um, and having like a hygiene support like Kristen throughout that it really guided me my way. And then finally I ended up in the Easton location where I am now. So yeah, I really love it, and I finally found my home.
I love that. Yeah. Well, yeah, and to be a temp first, I mean, that's kind of a big, just a way to kind of, get to know each office and
Yeah.
know if you enjoy it. Um,
Yeah.
and so tell me a little bit about like what that experience was when you were that first day, when you were going into that first office temping. What was that like for you?
So first day, I will say, there was a lot of like onboarding, and it made my life so easy. It was almost like, in its own way, a little bit of school, but more of like Aspen school. Like, it wasn't being thrown to the wolves. It was like, hey, like, this is what your job's going to look like. I'm going to show you everything and where everything is in the office. And we had like a checklist that we went through.
Yeah.
For me personally, it was great. And I felt like I was so well taken care of when I first came in that I felt confident moving forward. You know, it was a really, really good process.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's kind of funny because like when I think back to, anytime like that first day for me, when I came in with Aspen Dental, it was the same experience that I had. And that was so long ago to see how much they've grown and where they are now with onboarding, they've kind of kept that and kept that growing. Um, and I think a key for this that we're exploring with this webinar, building those relationships in offices, being a temp in a sense and the float, you kind of had to practice probably a lot of building relationships with all
Yeah.
types of different team members. So kind of walk through that a little bit. Like what were some of the challenges or if you experienced any challenges or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, from office to office, you're going to find so many different personalities. And
Mhm.
I think it taught me a lot about myself, because that's the real world. Like, you're going to encounter people everywhere with different personalities. And it's not always about, if you're finding someone that you really click with, that's great. But you might find someone that there's something there and it's not clicking. it's not about saying I don't click with this person. It's about saying what's different and where can we find that balance together? Because if you really want to find it, you will, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
and there was that. And I feel like I pretty much had fun anywhere I went.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Alicia is like a ball of like energy and sparkles and like
I,
positivity. I think it would be like really challenging for her to find a place that she doesn't like
yeah.
click or fit in. But I think that that's like, really great for you to bring up that like it
Mhm.
really does teach you about the real world and treating patients too,
Yeah.
because not
Mm-hmm.
patient is going to you're not going to be best friends with every patient because sometimes you're breaking news to them that like maybe they don't want to hear or that
Mhm.
is hard for us to say or maybe like they're having a rough day but finding like that commonality to
Yeah,
give them like good care. It's the same as finding kind of your niche in an office.
Yeah.
definitely.
And I think in the group that your office is in, it's owned by the same doctor. He's got 3 practices, and a lot of that staff has been there for a long time.
Mhm.
And so there are definitely different personalities, but it's like kind of a constant there.
Mhm.
So I think it's like it's nice that you got a chance to you know spend time with each office, and the office that she's in now is like it was like made for her. It seems like the team that's there, like she just
Yeah.
fits in so well, and it's so great to see.
And that's awesome. So then, I mean, it sounds like you've had some great examples of what a great team is.
Yeah.
Because if they have that team for so long and no one's wanted to leave, obviously they're doing something right. And like, what are those key things that when you look at the teams, um, what were the key values or anything that you noticed that was something that stood out?
So I know this is something that's always the go-to, but communication. And that's not
Mhm.
just talking about what's going wrong, it's talking about what's also going well.
Mhm.
And people feel, wanted and praised
Mhm.
because it's so easy to constantly say, well, this isn't working and, they focus on the negative.
Mhm.
But in time, when things are good, oftentimes we're just not talking about them because it's going smooth. But
Yeah.
honestly, like everyone's like a hype person there. And it really helps. Like when you're having a bad day, someone's always there to be like, hey, I can help you with this. Let's focus on
Mhm.
this. You have to want to do it because we all get tired and we get in this like go to work, do your job, go home. And that's real life. But finding the little moments when you can, just get that thought in your head like, hey, I see someone struggling today. Let me help them. And just communicating like you're here to help, it really makes things go smoothly and it just creates such a nice work atmosphere.
Yeah. No, and I think you're hitting that nail on the head with communication every time because, I think it is when you can express when teams can kind of have that trust with each other, that when they are having a bad day, that they can voice that and say, "Hey, I'm
Yeah.
not at 100% today. I'm maybe at 75% today. Can someone kind of help me with this?" Or, just asking for help. And um, I mean, no, looking at myself even, like it's hard sometimes to ask for help. So you have to have that trust, I feel like. So that's a big thing, a part of communication, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you get that sense of trust? Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you have to feel comfortable enough to want to ask people to help you.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna just tell you, I'm a person who really struggles to ask for help. I'm just always like, everyone looks busy. I'm just gonna forge forward. I got this. And
Hmm. Hygienists,
you,
I think all the time. I like that. Yeah.
but yeah, you'll be your own worst enemy if you do that. Just communicating with your coworkers. And I'm gonna tell you, most of the time they're just gonna be like, yeah, I can help you. It's very rare that anyone is gonna tell another individual that's struggling that they're just not gonna help.
Yep. Yep. So it's like kind of getting out of our own head and just getting out of that uncomfortableness and just, practicing asking for help and actually doing it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
it's funny. That's one of the biggest things. Like uh when I'm in an office helping a hygienist, and they're like, I'm not gonna have time to do this and do that, and I'm like, okay, but you should not be the only one doing all of these things. Like, you don't have 10 arms. And they're like, what? Exactly like Alicia said, but they're busy and I don't know who to ask and this and that. And once
Yeah.
you can get into a place where you know who like your go-to person is,
Mhm.
it's that much easier. And the only way that you're going to figure that out is with communication. Um,
Yeah.
I find that like the most successful offices, they have solid morning huddles every day where
Mhm.
they go through the schedule and they say, okay, from this time to this time, this person is just helping new patients, this person is helping the doctor, this person is floating and helping wherever in sterilization or with hygiene. So they're calling out those, they're coming in with a game plan, and when I think of communication, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Is like, okay, what's the game plan and what are we
Yep.
doing?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's be preventing and not just reacting in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being prepared instead of
Yeah.
reaction. Because, I think when you're thinking of it, I think it's also then showing that consistency because, like you said, they're always doing a morning huddle. So now the team expects that. They've built
Mhm.
that consistency of knowing, okay, we're gonna have that trust now with each other that we're gonna know what to do. And if things maybe don't go as planned, I know we're gonna have another game plan because we've already talked it through. So, it's those little things that we tend to forget about that seem so basic, but they actually make such a big difference. And, I think sometimes when you do go into an office, I know, Kristen, in your role, you know, you can probably pick out the little things that some offices could change. And if they just implement it for a month to see in the magic almost. Do you have any examples of like what you've maybe helped with offices and where does that lead? Like when do you come into the picture if an office is struggling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'll do, my regular, kind of office visits. I see some offices more than others, just depending on how long they've been established and what the needs of that office are, and what the needs of like the staff is. So if I have a hygienist that just recently graduated, I'm probably going to be spending more time there. Or if we have a newer office manager or even a newer doctor, I'm probably going to be spending my time there. It's interesting because half of my market has been established for a really long time. So the area where Alacia is,
Mhm.
her doctor has owned those practices for 15, almost 20 years at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
And then I have, our Philly and New Jersey markets that have only been open for some of them less than a month, actually. Like, we're constantly opening them. So the struggles and the challenges are a little bit different in each place. So usually what I'll do is, I'll go in, I'll observe for a little while, and then I'll sit down with the office manager and the doctor and see like where their pain points are. And it's often not, actually, I'll say this, it's almost never with the hygienist. It's
Yeah.
the systems in place that we need to just tighten up to just make things move more smoothly. And that's where I'll partner with like our operations team members too, like our regional managers and our territory director, um
Yeah.
to to help get those systems in. For our hygienists, I will help them by listening to the way that they're explaining their treatment, for example. And
Mhm.
um it's usually just, hey, that sounded great, but have you thought about maybe just changing this little verbiage, or have you
Yeah.
tried maybe this? Has this worked for you? Let's try that for a little bit and
Mhm.
see if your patients seem to understand what you're saying a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'll have
Yeah.
some hygienists that go really in depth with like the technical and clinical and very like
Mhm.
educational terms, which is great, and I know they're like really educated and super smart and all that, but
Yeah.
then our patients are kind of like, so
Hearing the lights like what? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So being kind of a outsider looking in, being able to give that feedback in a constructive way. And I think and I hope that it always feels that way, and that I'm not ever criticizing, and that I'm just really a layer of help and support, which is
Yeah.
something that I wish that I had when I was, out of
Mm.
school, or even,
Yeah.
practicing even a couple years ago. I didn't have a support person. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so this role is definitely multifaceted for sure, but I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, again, a lot of it is all about communication, like when you're mentioning the communication for patients. I mean, I think it all ties into then how successful that team is yet together, but that reflects then in their patient care. It's all funny how it ties together in that way. And I feel like for you too, I mean, you're having to navigate through all different types of personalities, just like we as just hygienists, and like Alicia with her patients even too. And just I feel like it's when maybe how certain people maybe need feedback, or how they communicate themselves, if they're maybe more introverted or extroverted. um have you done anything in regards to personality tests at all, or has any of the team like ever dived into that? Because I feel like that's sometimes always so beneficial when you can look at certain personality types, how they all play into the office. But
Yeah. So our hygiene support team actually did that a couple months ago at one of our meetings, and we went through like all of our different personality types, and what how that kind of like relates and reflects. And it's funny because like you do start to kind of pick up on that when you're working with different hygienists.
mhm,
um I haven't done it with the hygienists themselves, but it was something that I was thinking about. It would be very interesting, I think, kind of to see. And I always like doing it for myself. I find it like kind of interesting and fun too, like as a
yeah,
participant doing it. It reminds me of like, when I was in middle school doing the quizzes and like, Cosmo Girl and stuff. It's like
yeah. It's like getting
uh
myself in a way. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, what
Yeah.
color nail polish am I? You know? But
Yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, the reason why I bring that up is because it's just funny when you look at things. When I was doing the research for this webinar, you could apply this to any facet of your life, not just work. I mean, if you can hone in on something, if you're committed to maybe, yeah, I want to improve my work and my success at work, then you can see how that trickles into then your home life and how you communicate with your friends and your family. It's just interesting how just maybe taking that leadership role that I feel like all hygienists have that natural like leader in them. And even in the office, I feel like if there's a good hygienist in that office, then that office just naturally is very successful. And I think it's because maybe we just had to learn how to communicate with our patients. And there's so many different personalities that we encounter on a daily basis. I mean, I don't want to speak for you guys by any means, but I feel like that's why we're so good at what we do. And I don't you guys want to maybe give a little feedback on that too, of any experiences that you've had where you felt like that leadership in the office where you're like, man, I can really I can really make a difference in this office. Like, I don't know if you have any you want to share, or
I
yeah.
feel like, yeah, you can definitely speak to that, because going into your office, I feel like you were kind of like that missing link. And kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you like fit into that group so well. And you gained a lot of trust and a lot of respect with your doctor and your office manager. So yeah, I feel like that's a great question for you.
Mhm.
I could definitely say that I feel most like in this office, I found like a leader in myself that maybe I didn't find before, and I
Mhm.
think I just wasn't in the right spot to lead. Um, so yeah, it definitely, when you have a doctor that really respects you and sees the potential in you, and trusts you, then it's kind of a natural thing. It just happens itself. There's many times where my doctor will, really like work well with me and trust me to explain things to the patient without her having to like look over my shoulder and make sure I'm saying things right. Like she's just like, you've got this. And
Yeah.
she actually compliments me and says like, you explain things so well to patients. And so I think like you'll keep stepping in. Like I say, I'm certainly not at my best. Like I'm growing all the time and I hope to keep being better. But having someone like a good doctor to support you will allow you to keep growing into that leader.
Yeah. No, I agreed. And that's kudos to you. I mean, because it is all about that trust and, having that, yes, you have this amazing doctor, but it's also then learning from them and taking their feedback and being able to then grow. Sometimes it's hard for us to take that in, and we don't know what to do with it. So that's awesome. Very cool. And how often do you guys meet? Do you guys have like weekly or monthly get-togethers, or how does that look in your office in regards to, I don't know, like fun activities and just kind of celebrating the wins? Like, what does that look like?
So we try to like at least, ideally we'd like to like once a month, even if it's just after work, to go get some food together, sit down and kind of just blow off some steam and really enjoy each other. Because
Yeah.
at work, yeah, we're having fun, but we're working. But something really cool that's coming up for us at the end of this month is we're having our first annual like overnight outing together.
Oh, cool. That's
Yeah.
where is that you guys going?
So we're going up to like a lake in the Pocono area and we're staying at an Airbnb and we're sleeping
Fun.
over and we're
Yeah.
having themed pajamas.
Oh my gosh, that is like I can picture that
So beautiful.
with groups so easily because so like this is the group that like they'll have like a theme like Halloween where like they're all like it's like a matching theme they're I can see it and I love it. That sounds so exciting. I'm so glad you guys are doing
Our
that.
doctor the theme party.
That's
I
awesome.
love that. I love
Yeah. I'm hoping that it's the first of many. So we'll see. It's exciting.
No, and I think that's again, like it just shows what that team, like that culture that's already in that team. And I think also that just, from Aspen, I feel like that's kind of just a part of what Aspen is too. And
Mhm.
even though we're such now a large corporation, it's just that it still feels like a small family. And that we're all part of one big team. And so to see how it kind of has trickled down to now to an actual local office, like it's just awesome. Yeah. So it's the reason why I like this. I just love this company. But yeah, awesome. So, like how do you think, when you think about then how great your team is, how do you think that affects your patient care?
I mean, hands down, people feel it. They tell us all the time. Um,
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many times people are just like, I've been so scared to come to the dental office, like so much dental anxiety. And they will say from the front to the back, they're like, everyone's so nice here. I feel so comfortable. And before you know it, not just coming in with dental anxiety is scary, coming in and then possibly having a huge treatment plan because you've avoided it for so long, that's scary.
Mhm.
And you know what? I see that same person coming to all their appointments,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think that the feeling that we give to the patients is because of how well that we're all working together. They definitely feel it.
Yeah. And that's when I think back of when I was clinical still with Aspen, that's how my office was too. It felt like it felt like a small practice, our own little small practice, just of how well we did get along. Now, I'm not saying that like it was great all the time and we didn't have like maybe those hard conversations or, we had to navigate through things. But we all loved what we were doing and we all knew what the ultimate goal was. So it made it more fun. And it was, when we did have those little bumps in the road, like we just came back to the why. Like, what is the why? Why are we here? And we had that trust, like you're talking about too, like that you have with your office. And it was also then having the trust, with who my mentors were, you having trust with Kristen as, your go-to when you're having some issues. And so has there been like bumps that you've had to navigate through or reached out to Kristen for some guidance?
And yeah, I feel like definitely things like, I think figuring out how to ask for help. I know that we struggled with that for a while, and it wasn't really anyone's fault, but it was just like figuring out like how to get someone into for perio charting, things like that.
Yeah.
So you always have Kristen to just even to kind of have your back with the conversation or how to bring it up, because
Mhm.
sometimes I don't know what to say.
Yep.
um
Yeah.
it's like that definitely was for a little bit for me, because it's like you do sometimes, in a way, being so comfortable with each other can like bite you as well. You still have to be like, hey, we work together and we got to get stuff done. So,
Yeah.
and if you get over that hump, you will, and you can have both, you truly can. But
Mhm.
when you have someone in your corner to kind of guide and just keep things rolling for you, it's a big help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes my role is also like giving the hygienist just like a little like tap, like, hey, remember like, that thing that we talked about. Like
Mhm.
make sure that you're holding yourself accountable to that. Make sure you're holding your team accountable to that. Don't
Yeah.
be away on hygiene island doing everything by yourself, like
Yeah.
ask your team for help. Like make sure that because sometimes even just holding yourself accountable to that, to
Mhm.
reaching out, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I think when
Yeah.
you are really close with people almost on like a personal level, it's almost like you feel like you're like asking for a favor.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So it's a balance for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's almost like you said, like those little taps. You just sometimes need that person to remind you of how awesome you are and be like, you've got this. Like, like remember you are the leader of this office. This is what you said you want to help change or you were needing help with. So you got this, and it's I think it is nice because like Chris and I didn't have a mentor like this either. So, when I was in this role too, like you, it was kind of I felt kind of out of the element, but also very prepared. He's like, I want to share all this. I want to help in so many ways that I knew that new students needed, or just new people in general. When you go anywhere that's new, it can be kind of a little scary and overwhelming.
Fair.
So yeah, it's nice then to have someone who can then help communicate those things when maybe it is a little scary or you're not quite sure what to say. Um, and like Kristen said, also, how can you get anything fixed if you don't communicate and let maybe those people who could do those things for you or help navigate through those hard things? Because there's so many times or maybe we'll hear something later on where we can't really change the circumstances anymore. And it's like, well, why didn't you just reach out at that moment? Maybe it could have been different. And it's just remembering that. I think with communication, sometimes it's about just pushing through that discomfort, like we kind of touched on before. Um, but then also remembering to kind of, I guess, in a sense, know that it's always going to be better to communicate in the long run. Every time you hesitate, it's like, no, it's always best to just communicate. You can never over communicate.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, really with this, it's just, I think, highlighting that communication and going further in that is a big part of communication is that active listening. And I think that can also be the hardest component with communication is the actual active listening. A lot of times it is just a lot of listening to wait to respond, which I know I sometimes always have to kind of be mindful of for myself. And it's kind of taking those few seconds to sit in and just actually be with that person. Um, and I guess any like feedback on what you had to kind of grow in yourself. And Kristen, this is to you too, but Alicia, you as well. But when were the moments that you kind of had to step back and maybe turn in the back? active listening role and check how much we're actually listening.
I feel like I am working on that constantly every day. From even thinking back to being a clinical hygienist, and you have so many things going on in the day. And like Lacey was saying, sometimes our patients, it's been 10, 15, sometimes 20 years, and for us it's no big deal because we do this day in, day out, all day long. But for them, this is like a life-changing day for them, a life-changing moment. They might have made this appointment 4 times before they actually had the courage to make it in. So
Yeah.
One of the things that when I'm coaching hygienists, it's like, okay, I know that, like, yes, we time is, a factor, and we have to be efficient, and we have to be productive with our time and all this. But being able to sit knee to knee with a patient and tell them that, yes, this is where you are, but I'm here for you, and we're going to get through this together. And listening to not only just like their what they're having pain in, or what they're having, what their chief complaint is, but what is holding them back, and starting to help to break down some of those barriers for them when you're right there with them and really connecting with them, and showing them that you have their best interest at heart. Just having that, I find, is something that even people who have been going to the dentist every 6 months maybe, or regularly, that they might not get normally. So not getting thrown just in the repetition of the day, and reminding ourselves that, like, each patient is its own individual being. And sometimes that can take work, but it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, no, and you just kind of hit something with that. It's because sometimes you do get in the roboticness of the day. And it did, like, I remember I would have to, take that actual conscious moment and be like, okay, like, I gotta take on this is a patient, this is a human being. I gotta actually slow down here. Don't go in autopilot mode. And when I did that, I actually then realized how much I enjoyed it. When those moments where I was feeling so burnt out was when actually I needed to just step back a little bit and take a minute and reconnect, to my actual self. So then I wasn't so much in autopilot mode. And then you felt, then it was great. And it's like, okay, I got this. So I feel like with communication and even with building good relationships within the office and the patients and everything, it's really about just understanding that sometimes not everyone is right in that moment. Just as much as we get kind of lost in our day-to-day stuff, that other person probably is also in their own world of day-to-day stuff. So it's to remember that, okay, how can we make sure we're understanding and we're not just hearing words, but we're actually understanding what are behind the words. That's always was something that I liked to practice with patients, because I felt like we see not so many patients, but we had so many different people that we're seeing. So it's good to practice and find different ways that some people responded to this and other people didn't maybe respond to. But yeah, like, any thoughts on how, like, what that helped with when you could realize, like, hey, like, this person maybe is just a little overwhelmed, and then taking a step back.
Yeah, Alicia, what's your experience like with new patients, or even returning patients, of connecting with them and really making that difference for them? What's it like for you?
Especially with, the returning patients, I feel like it's pretty, like I build these relationships with people, and I feel like for the most part, the hardest part is the new patients that come in that it's been 20 years. Everything else can be, for the most part, pretty smooth. But I think that, like you said, you find yourself in these autopilot moments where you're just kind of like flying through work, and
Yeah.
you're but sitting down with people and hearing them out genuinely is one of the most rewarding things that I do. So it is definitely like my driving force. And I think that when I've been in your situation where, you're like overwhelmed and it's just day in and day out and it gets monotonous. Like that's
Yeah.
how it be.
Yeah.
Um, but then you have that moment where you're like, hold on,
Hmm.
this is why. And I mean, you have people who cry and hug
Hmm.
you,
Yeah.
and you're like, I'm making a difference in the world, even if it's small.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
No,
It
agreed.
keeps you going.
Yeah, it does. No, it does. And I feel like too, like, once you can hone into those skills, and I feel like sometimes when we're thinking about how can we make our office better, how can we do better by our patients, sometimes it always is to just, coming back to yourself in a sense, like what are the things that maybe I can help work on for myself to then be an example for the office. Because, just kind of bringing it back to with my experience, that it is always sometimes easier to go to external things and to find like this is wrong and this is wrong and oh, it's a new OM or we just hired a new front desk person. And I think sometimes it's taking a step back and coming back to those good practices of communication and realizing that everyone has a new day, everyone's been new somewhere, and sometimes it's maybe leading with that support and openness that can make the biggest difference. So it's just neat to see, I guess, with communication, like, yes, within our office and with our own team members, but then how are we can also bring that back to our patients too, which is just a cool thing, I feel like. And it's just overall then seeing, like with Kristen, like this position is not in every dental office. It's very, and it's almost an every DSO now, but I don't think every single one. But it's just neat to see how, when do you come into play? And because the key relationships in that office are always going to be the office manager, the doctor, and the hygienist. And then obviously our dental assistants are also like a subcategory within our front desk, but that key triage, is going to be the doctor, and the hygienist. And, just what are the key things that you've coached to at one of your struggling offices to help bring those three together in regards to what we've kind of talked about so far?
Yeah. I was actually just very recently at an office that was going through I mean, turmoil might be a little dramatic to say, but so the owner doctor had been out on maternity leave for the last few months. She's just coming back. Before she left, her team was like rock solid. Like they were like just I was so envious of like the relationship between the hygienist and the office manager. The doctor was like really the thread that was like holding everything together. And when she was gone, the team was kind of silently struggling.
Yeah.
And they didn't reach out to not only me, but to, their other lines of support and communication. This office is also kind of like a training hub for a lot of the other new offices that are going to be opening in the next, couple months. And so the office was really just full, like physically full of people. And a lot of people that weren't, tenured, and were
Sure.
learning. And the
Yeah.
office manager was teaching and training, a bunch of people. And the doctor just came back and was like, okay, well, I'm really glad that you guys didn't bother me on my maternity leave. I appreciate that. However, we've got to figure this out, and we've got to really help. And there was a lot of like telephone happening, through the office. So it was just a lot of like misguided communication and no one really wanting to address what they thought issues were. And then it all kind of boiled down to there really not being any serious significant problem, but just that the lines of communication were broken and blurred and no one wanted to bother anybody else.
Yeah.
And I tell the hygienist, I'm like, guys, like, because if I have right now 22 offices that I help to support.
Yeah.
And sometimes all I can see is from afar. And,
Mhm.
if I reach out and like, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need? Sometimes I'm not going to be able to like read through the lines, or in between the lines to really see if something's wrong. Like I can see our reporting and, okay, it looks like we're pretty
Mhm.
stable here. And yeah, it came down to them being like, well, we didn't want to bother you. We didn't think that this is what I'm like. My title is
This is what
territory manager of hygiene support. I'm like, support is in my title. I'm here to support you.
yeah.
And as much as I, appreciate them, being concerned about, my, everything that I'm doing. Um, I'm like, I wish you would have told me before because I could have come in sometimes as like a mediator,
Yeah.
like sometimes as just like a neutral party to say, okay, office manager, because I'm not just hygienist support. I'm,
The whole
hygiene, that whole department. So it's like, okay, office manager, how can I help you communicate
Mhm.
to Miss Hygienist and doctor and even like dental assistants,
Yeah.
So um yeah, it's definitely communication, but the right kind of communication.
Mhm.
Um and you know, just being able to, again, it goes back to just being able to ask for help and being
Yeah.
able to accept help.
Yeah, and I think I just those are great points, and the one point I wanna piggyback off of is when that's setting, like, the mood, I guess, or the atmosphere. It's, like, the right time, I guess, or but, like, how do you set the tone, or when would be the best time that you find to maybe have those hard conversations? I know sometimes we pick the wrong times, especially if maybe we're in a rush or we're, like, all of a sudden we've let this bubble inside of us, like, "We wanna take care of it now, though."
Yeah.
What are the keys to success to making sure communication will always remain open and trusting?
Yeah. I usually try to, like, if I know that something's happening,
Mhm.
and nobody really wants to talk about it, like I'll try to kind of like, broach topics gently, until, I can tell that somebody feels comfortable sharing. But I'm never going to like force a conversation unless I feel like there is a like significant risk of, you know, someone really feeling like disrespected, or if they
Yeah.
feel like they're unsure if this is somewhere that they want to stay. But I try to be very respectful of everyone's you know privacy and autonomy to say like, hey, everything okay here? It is okay.
Mhm.
Well, let me know like if that changes. But there have been situations where you know different personalities in offices didn't necessarily like jive that well, and we have just sat down like adults and said, hey, okay, like these are the things that we're kind of struggling with, like
Mhm.
none of us are leaving, so let's figure that out. And you don't have to be best friends going
Right.
on sleepovers in the Poconos necessarily. I love when that happens, but that's
Yeah.
also the reality is that it's not always
No.
going to be that way.
Mhm.
um but it is, I think it is a skill to be able to broach conversations that it's going to be as comfortable as possible for everyone. Even myself. I mean,
Yeah.
there are times where I'm like, I really should talk about this, but I'm like, this is uncomfortable. But it's all about growth and like personal growth and professional growth, and being
Mhm.
able to say like, okay, well, if we want to move on and get back to why we're here, which is like really great patient care, we've got to move
Yeah.
past this like icky
Yep.
stuff.
Yep. Exactly. And sometimes it was even, I think, getting out of the office sometimes and going to like a coffee shop or just somewhere
Yeah.
that wasn't in the office.
Yeah.
Um, just to get out of maybe what the tension was at the office to just like, okay, this is a different space. It's not, and so it's just, it is so funny when you think of how there's so many factors that can play into how the meeting or the conversation or how anything will go just by how it started from the very beginning and that intention that you have from the very beginning. So as much as I know sometimes we don't like to plan, or you don't want to feel like it's, I don't know, you're manipulative or any sense of that way. But sometimes it is nice to just plan ahead of like, how do you want this conversation to go? What is the ultimate goal that you're wanting to have? So that way you can kind of, what are the possible expectations that might not go along with what you're thinking might happen. So that way you can kind of regulate yourself and not, if it is a difficult conversation, you can keep yourself emotionally there and checked in, so you're not just flying off the handle or something, or making it unprofessional. Um, and then you can easily recover, and then you can move forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a lot of great things of where we as a DSO with Aspen is that strength of having that support in those times where it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And we have a person anyway, with you, and then even your original manager, who can come in and help with those conversations depending on what the situation is. So it's just, yeah, it's just another way to show how even if your relationships are great in the office, they're not always so, and there will be help and support. Yeah.
I have a lot of hygienists too that will like reach out to me for not even for me to have the conversation, but to ask like, hey, how would you handle the situation, or what do you think I should do? Or, sometimes if they are calling me to say, oh my gosh, this is happening, like, I don't know what to do, I'll tell them that I'm happy to have the conversation for you, but I think it's going to be a lot more impactful for you to do it rather than, me kind of swooping in when I wasn't really involved in that situation to start with. But this is the route I think that you should take, and I'm going to follow up with you, and I'm going to, check back in and see how that conversation ended. And then if you need a second layer of support after, like, I will come in, in your honor, but sometimes it's just kind of guiding them through like, okay, well, I know that you're, maybe you're upset about X, Y, or Z, but have you thought about, why your front desk person thought like this, or, or that, and then seeing kind of like from ways.
Yeah.
So.
No, and you're right. And it's wonderful because you're helping them grow as a person. So the next time that does happen, or in a similar situation, they're going to know then for that time. And then they're going to gain that confidence again. And it's like a snowball effect. So where, then it's going to be like, it's always going to be a fun visit when you go there, and you're going to be like, oh, look at you. You're my shining star.
I know. I get so proud of them, honestly. And I think we lost.
We did lose Alicia. I think we did. Yeah. I don't know. No, she popped back up. Yes.
I'm so sorry.
You are all good. You're all good. We were just kind of recapping on how it's nice to have that support with what Kristen had said of how she's not just going to do it for you. She's going to help you grow and push you a little bit.
Sure. And honestly, that is what anyone, no matter what your role is like, having someone in your corner like that is what's going to make you grow, because it's hard to do all your daily tasks and always hold yourself really accountable. Like, we're human.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even with, like, not even with us in this dental role, like just even your personal life, if you want to change something or if you want to grow, you usually always hire a coach. So it's almost the same thing with a kind of a built-in coach for you while you're doing your job. And I think that's what attracted me with Aspen, was just that sense of personal growth too. They wanted to see you grow as a person. And I think that's why they have all these built-in support roles, because that's such a big part of what a corporation is, which makes me so proud to be a part of it. And I think on that note, I mean, I think we covered some great things, and I want to thank you guys again. I don't know if you have any last things that you maybe want to put in, just some takeaways that you maybe both want to share.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I think that it's just like we talked about before, is finding it in yourself to like, even if it's just you're having a hard time communicating, finding at least that one person you can trust, and it can kind of light a fire, as in a good way. It can start to open the communication because yeah, the reality is you may not be able to talk to every single person in your office, but like find someone that you can talk to and go from there. They might be, like Kristen said, that might be your person that's like your go-to for help. And
Mhm.
then if you can open that communication line, it might encourage others to do the same.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think a great lesson for, everyone really is like being okay asking for help and knowing that you can't, sometimes you really can't do it alone. And even not in an office environment, in really any capacity in your professional life or your personal life, it's okay to raise your hand and say, hey, like
Mhm.
either I'm not okay or like I just need support, and knowing that it's okay,
Yeah,
and that people will be there to kind of catch you when you stumble a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have hard days, that's for sure. Like
Mhm.
there's days where it's not even just going to be your office. Like if you're struggling with people in the office, there's days where it's honestly going to be patients because of so many different personalities that you're going to feel and just being able to like find that help within each other is huge because this is what we do, we help people. So we just have to support each other so that we can continue to do it and do it well.
Yep. No, exactly. And I think I want to just say again, thank you, because I think we hit some really great little tidbits and gems there to share. So again, thank you guys for joining. I am going to pop and share my screen just really quick for the last slide. If I can figure out how to do that now, guys, with technology here. Okay. All right. So yes, I think this will be it. You can see my screen, hopefully.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm just gonna make this a tad bigger. But yeah, so there is, for anyone who's gonna watch this back, there is a QR code here that you can scan with your camera. Just a little survey, so that way we can make these better for the next time. Or if there was something that did go really great that you wanted to share, please let us know. But yeah, thanks for hopping on, guys, and thanks for anyone who's gonna be watching this back. And yeah,
For having us.
yeah, thanks. Have a great night,
Yeah.
guys. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.